What's up, Jose?
Hey Nicholas, how's it going?
Good, brother.
Doing,
How you doing?
I'm doing good. We're here in Chicago, enjoying the nice weather. So maybe we can start off with maybe you can tell us a little bit about the about Bordertown, the show itself, and how you ended up as the voice of Ernesto.
Yeah. I mean, it seems to be the popular question, but the answer is pretty basic in the sense that I was just called in by by my agent, and got this call to come in and audition for a Seth MacFarlane's animated series. And it was a no-brainer. It's not like something you sit on and wonder if you're going to go out for it or not. But it's a little overwhelming because there was like six different characters that they wanted me to read for. So it was a long, involved process, and I owe a lot of it to Linda LaMontagne, who is the casting director, who just had a lot of patience and really kind of just taught me the business and taught me like, okay, faster, okay, enunciate, okay, you're losing the energy, like molding me into this, into the form, which I was unfamiliar with, and then laying down decent audition tracks and then had to go through a process with the creator, Mark Henteman, who's been with Family Guy for 12 years, and just kind of a chemistry with him and working with me and getting me to different places with the voices. And, so it was a long process, but, it's been like 2 years in the making.
Well, that's awesome. So it seems like this show is long overdue in terms of many of the Latino viewers watching mainstream shows and not just the shows, but going to the movies themselves. We are big supporters of film and networks. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the roles that you play or the voices that you play, both Ernesto and JC. More specifically about Ernesto, who came up with the name Ernesto Gonzalez? It just seems like in selecting you, half of the last name
I
was
know,
already
right?
resolved with such a common Latino name.
Well, I don't know the whole story. Yeah, I don't. I mean, it's always been Ernesto Gonzalez from the time that I was involved. But I think the actual Ernesto and maybe even the full name was somebody that Mark Henteman knew really well, and a friend of the family. And I can't remember the exact story, but when I came onto the project, it was already Ernesto Gonzalez. Yeah.
Oh, okay, awesome. And what about maybe you can talk to us about your the other character in the show, Bud Buckwald, whose voice is Hank Arazi. Maybe you can tell us about a little bit
That's
about
Hank
him.
Azaria. Hank Azaria.
Azaria, I'm sorry, Hank Azaria, and
Yeah. Well, I mean,
how you guys
yeah, no,
met.
everybody knows Hank. Yeah, I mean, everybody knows Hank from Simpsons as well as all his on-camera stuff. Um, he the funny thing is we're never in the same room. I'm laying down my stuff in LA. He's doing it, in New York, and he's on the phone with the executive producer as he's getting notes doing it. So it's very independent. What I'm looking forward to is maybe like a table read or something, a performance where we can both get together and ham it up a bit. But honestly, Hank and I see each other more when we're doing publicity for the project. Just one of those things where each person is alone when they're recording.
It's just like some of the scenes on the show, some of the links that I've seen. Um, it's still very
Uh-huh.
real nowadays in some of these neighborhoods around the country. Living next to an Anglo and Latinos growing up in mainstream societies and so on and so on.
Yeah.
How does it relate to your life specifically?
Um, I mean, I grew up a pretty varied, life with people I was surrounded by. I mean, I come from a very tight knit, Latino community in San Antonio, but because of that, there were mentors always, around. We had the city council. We had a Latino mayor. It's like I never felt like a minority until I went to college. You know, um, so I grew up with a different kind of amount of role models and people around. You know.
A question from one of our fans. Not sure if you have any children, but if you did have children, or if you do, would you teach them or allow them to speak in Spanish, or have them? Obviously, second languages are always good for any child. What's your feeling about that?
Well, I mean, I don't have any kids, but we're going to be working on them very soon with my fiance. Um, so that's a very imminent thing for me. So but for me, with my thoughts on that, I think that I think the more languages, the better, especially Spanish. I would love for my child to be a lot better than me at all that, you know.
Do we
But
hear any
I think
Spanish?
multiple languages would be fantastic.
Yeah, yeah,
Huh?
that's so true. Do we hear this? Do we hear any Spanish in the show, or is that you can reveal? Could you reveal that, or?
Yeah, there's Spanish in the show. There's singing in Spanish. There's lines in Spanish. There's Spanish throughout, peppered in.
Okay, okay. Well, that's
Definitely.
looking forward to that. Well, here, a last question here. So there are many Ernestos in today's America. What message do you have for our viewers on how a show like Border Town helps change the face of America today?
Well, I think that with a comedy like Bordertown, you're allowed to talk about many things that you wouldn't be able to in maybe a straightforward drama or any other kind of medium. For some reason, when it's put with this backdrop of animated characters saying these lines, it's suddenly kind of okay, or at least we're willing to listen, and not feel preached to. And I think that's what the show does, is that it's like within everything from like knockdown, fall over kind of trip, and it's funny kind of comedy, to a satire that's working in a different plane. I think there's a and it's what it really is about the show is that it's I'm trying to bring it back to what your exact question was. What again?
Just basically what the message you have for our viewers about the show itself and how it changes the face of America today.
Yeah, is so yeah, and then I think that because you can talk about these things that you can't normally, and because of our medium, I think there's a lot to be learned, and I really hope that people are open enough to watch, and we're an equal opportunity offender. I think people are going to be offended at times, and I think you should be. You should be offended by the level of racism that surrounds you. You should be offended by how people regard you because of the color of your skin. You should be offended by this and so many other things. That it's like it's okay if you're offended by a few jokes here, because that's not all that's happening. The show doesn't just take low hanging fruit. The show incorporates a really smart satire, and that I think is so timely, as you said. These are the topics that are pulled straight from the headlines, and we're actually we predicted some of them. A lot of this we worked on before these things are even happening, like Trump, running for his presidency. All these things the show almost kind of foretold. So in a lot of ways, I think there's just a lot to be learned, and I love that a show with this kind of approach is available and is trying to take on these hot button topics, that are deciding presidencies.
Right. Well, listen, that's a great way to sum it up. We look forward to the show in January. We want to thank you for your time.
Okay.
And
Hey, LatinoScoop.com fans, this is Nicholas Gonzalez, and please join me in January and watch Bordertown.